The game is afoot. Come on in. This story goes back to 1989, and I was playing in a four-piece band, sort of a Beatle band, and we decided we would go to the UK, go to England and see if we could go pub to pub and just see if we could find a place to let us use our instruments and play maybe. And but the trip to England with the four guys that was in the band, we had a band of me and George, Michael, Tim, and that's Brad in the middle. He was our MAL, our equipment guy, our roadie, our interference runner. These guys, we had lots of fun in this band. We going over there, we kind of checked in with the Abbey Road location, gone up with some poses at the famous intersection there, talked our way into the studio for just a few minutes for a photo op there with the big sign, come back down to the where Mike, that's Michael signing in on the wall. This is all 1989 before it was as tourist friendly as it is now. Come up to the picture of the visit to the front door of Abbey Road Studios. On this trip, we visited all kinds of places too. Actually, one more thing. If you notice, I had the white suit on. One of our objectives was to maybe recreate this pose, this famous album cover here using that intersection. This is actually a plaque that I bought inside Abbey Road. If you remember the story I told you about going over in '83, I bought this hanging there. But we wanted to create this album cover, so that's the four of us. We were known as Please Please. And that's us trying to recreate that moment. And in fact, that photograph was taken by my lovely wife at the time, just my girlfriend at that time. But we had such a great time on that trip. We visited other places like Stonehenge and the Apple Building. And the Apple Building is there on Baker Street. And if you know the famous address of Baker Street, not only the Apple Building, but the 221B Baker Street is also the address of Sherlock Holmes. And now in 1989, visiting London was a bit like flying by the seat of your pants. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't have the internet, if you can believe it. So you really didn't know what was going on over there. And but when we got there, we found out that the two principal players that were in the Sherlock Holmes series, Jeremy Britt played Sherlock, and Edward Hardwicke that played Watson, were doing a two-man show called The Secret of Sherlock Holmes. And we went to this play in a small London theater there just on the square. Had a great time and loved that show so much we actually went back a second night to see that. And second night we hung around the stage door long enough to see Mr. Britt come out, and actually he invited us backstage for a drink at one point, and just got to spend some time with him. He was just like Sherlock Holmes in the backstage. He had on a long dressing gown and would move with such accents, and it was just incredible to sit there literally with Sherlock and Watson in the backstage. But that was a great play there. Got get him to sign that. But another night we were out on the town, and another play that we discovered was going on there, that the Victor Spinetti was doing a one-man show. And you know, Victor Spinetti, of course, played the director in Hard Day's Night. He was the mad scientist in Help, and of course the big mouth bellowing army sergeant in Magical Mystery Tour. Well, his one-man play was called A Very Private Diary, and in that one-man show, he talked about basically his whole career, and he talked about working with so many great folks like Elizabeth Taylor, Richard Burton, as well as the Beatles. He had individual characterizations of each Beatle. If you've ever seen him, he was such a great guest at Beatle Fest and all the Beatle fan conventions and things like that. There are hours and hours of great interviews and conversations with Victor on the internet. A little homework assignment for you viewers: watch some Victor Spinetti interviews out there. You'll love those. But in the play, he also wanted to recreate the Big Mouth moment from Magical Mystery Tour. So he said he would need a couple of volunteers to help him recreate that scene. And if you know me in real life, you know I'm the shy, retiring type. So between the first and second syllables of volunteers, my hand was up, and he looked down, had on his T-shirt that said "Give peace a chance." So he invited me and a few of us up on the stage, and he was recreating that screaming moment, and his mouth was literally almost bouncing off our noses, and he told us to keep a straight face as good as we could. But it was such a thrill to have him playing that role right an inch away from your nose like that. But he also invited us backstage after the show, and when we got backstage, he said that actually that he had planned on going down and visiting with another friend of his. If we'd like to walk down the street with him, that he would be we could have some drinks with him. And he took us around the corner to a club called Lennon's. And Lennon was, of course, owned by Cynthia Lennon, and that's a shot of Vic and Cynthia Lennon in her pub. And here's a shot of Michael getting quite chummy there with Cynthia in the booth. And we kind of sensed that we were maybe a little bit, when we went to the door, it's kind of funny. The place was already closed because it was after Vic's end of his show, and he went to the door, and there's a guy running around in there, and he tapped on the window, and he was trying to say we're closed. He said, "Tell Cynthia it's Vic," and he went scurrying back, and he made quickly open the door, let us come in, and just have a few minutes there. We could kind of tell though that they were seemed like they were wanting to do some catching up, and we felt a little invading there, so we kind of excused ourselves. They did both sign the program from Vic's play there. That's Cynthia's autograph, and Vic here. That's the only time I got a chance to meet her. I'm sorry I didn't get my photo taken with her that night, but later on at some of the Beatle conventions and things, Vic signed that photo of the two of them together. He also signed at one Beatle Fest. He dubbed me his official assistant for that week and weekend. I ended up doing a lot of errands for him. He also remembered that I had been in his show over in London a few years before that, and he signed this autograph in the Hard Day's Night program to his co-star. He signed that to me at a different occasion, not the time we met him over there. So that was a nice bonus visit when we got to London to see the Sherlock Holmes plays and meet Cynthia and Victor Spinetti. One last errand that we wanted to run before we left England was, as a four-piece band, we had written a couple of original tunes. Michael had penned one called "Going to London Without You." Going to London without you, because he wasn't taking his girlfriend with him. So we made a tape of those original songs, took them to George Martin's Air Studio, dropped off the tape to them, and a few months later, they actually explained that he wasn't taking on any new projects at the time, but they sent us back this rejection letter that was, it turns out, was actually signed by Shirley Burns, his personal assistant there, and they also included a little photo that was signed by Sir George as well with that rejection letter. So that was nice. I often wondered if that was actually signed by him. A few years later, I got the chance to meet Mr. Martin too, and compared the signatures to what he put on my Sgt. Pepper album there. So that's I think that's pretty close, authentic autograph on that card too. So thanks for visiting today. I hope you've enjoyed this little interaction with a couple of the Beatles, the close circle there. You can see what I mean now by the close circle, and very close in Cynthia's case. So hope you enjoyed this visit. Next time, I'm going to talk about something that I hope will make you laugh. Peace and love. Stay safe out there. Science.